How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lone Wolf, and today I've got number 4 in my favourite trucks, and yeah, it's this, the Tayga, which I've definitely enjoyed it since I found it. Really, it's definitely one of the more dominant trucks in the game. It flies around pretty goddamn well. It does take a bit of damage these days since they've like upped the sort of damage statistics, or however it takes damage. But other than that, I just like it. I like the way it ploughs across pretty much every terrain you can throw at it. And I would say the funny thing with this is, since reviewing a lot of the other trucks, like, this is very good at a hell of a lot of things, but I'm not sure I'd say it's the best at any one specific thing, and I don't mean that against it, I just mean it's like a solid 8 out of 10 across the board. But there's other things that are like, yeah, they might do one thing better than this or whatever, but this has like a lot of yeah, a lot of decent cards up its sleeve. And as you can see now, just wherever you go, it just motors along. I like the fact that it's got different choices of tyres, as in, I know like pretty much every truck has different choices of tyres, but as you can see, it's got the custom muds, which are pretty cool. There is situations where I don't think the muds are as good as, like, even I've been using the chained. Really, on the Tayga I usually use the chained or the muds. I did a video a little while ago, but it was called like tyre testing, where I was using the Tayga on the contest in Drowned Lands from the train station to the sawmill, and I can just get better times with the chain tyres. I believe they bite into the mud a bit better. But I also think these custom muds alter the weight characteristics and the centre of mass of this truck, and feel like it puts the weight lower down, so it's less likely to roll on its side to begin with. And yeah, as you can see, it just eats up the terrain wherever you want to point it. There's not really too much planning involved. Just until that trailer to get its ass on the hitch, and we're off. And yeah, flying along the roads, to be honest, the reason why I use this quite a lot, sort of, I'd say behind the scenes quite a lot when I'm making videos, it depends which sort of videos I'm making. Obviously I'm doing a review on a different truck, then I'm using a different truck, but for a lot of like the upgrade videos, locations of upgrades, all that sort of thing, this was mainly what I was using behind the scenes, because it just motors along to wherever I wanted to go. If I was on Northport and I needed to go to Pedro Bay to like draw a line and sort of explain where it is the upgrade is, I generally took this thing, because in the high range gear with the high range gearbox, it motors along very nicely, but it's still got a lot of like torque, and yeah, it feels like it's making a pretty good effort all the time. Even now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it while I'm in the mud, but I was just leaving it in high, and it doesn't really stall a lot in high. It is possible, it is doable, but if you kind of smash into the mud and you're already at like high revs, it generally will wheel spin over stall, which I prefer. But this also seems to like carry on clawing its way through the mud a bit, whereas a lot of trucks will just, once they've hit that like wheel spin mechanic, you just see mud flying up, and yeah, you just stop where you are really. And again, that can happen with this, but it's pretty good for winging its way through quite a lot of things. And yeah, it's a good hauler. I mean, I've got this trailer on, it's a pretty big trailer, it's one of the bigger trailers in the game, I would say. Certainly in terms of weight, you can feel it when you're towing it, but again, this thing just wherever you go really. I'm in high gear, I'm travelling at the same speed as I would with or without the trailer. The steering's all pretty nice. I will say with the steering, it's, I wouldn't go as far as to say twitchy, but it's more on the side of twitchy than slow, which, if I'm honest, if I had to choose, I'd rather twitchy steering, because I can always just let go of the stick a bit more often. Yeah, that's what she said. And kind of straighten it out a bit. But with slow steering, obviously there's no making up for when you need a quick steering decision. So yeah, I would rather choose this. I will say though, because the steering's very close to the front, sometimes it can feel a little bit understeery. It's like, yeah, just because they're so close to the front, like if you imagine a bit of cab weight is kind of sat behind the front wheels, not above the front wheels, you can turn and it can just take an extra half a second sometimes for them to grip in. Again, it's not a major issue. I do believe these custom muds can affect that as well, and the reason I believe that happens with these custom muds, which I suppose is relatively unique to this. I know like the TUZ16 Taz has got these muds really now. Basically, because the muds are so wide, like when you're turning, depending which way you're leaning, which way your weight's bouncing and whatever, these tyres can feel like they can either grip in from the left or the right. They don't always feel like they're gripping from the middle. So sometimes when you go to steer, if I was steering to the left, the grip might change from the right hand side of the tyre to the left, and then it suddenly bites in really quick, and it's like, not oversteer, but it's kind of the opposite of understeer. It's very urgent and immediate, and you'll almost turn too much. Other times it can, say, steering left again, it'll jump from left to right of like where you're leaning, and that, I believe, where it can make it feel a bit understeery and stuff. But yeah, just overall it's like quite a hassle-free, when you just want to explore the game or you actually want to head somewhere, it's like a pretty damn good truck to take. There's not really a whole lot that I would choose above it. Obviously there's a few because it's not made it to my top favourite truck, but yeah, it doesn't, like, there's not a lot of thought involved. If I was going to be on whether it's Zimnegorsk or say Smithville Dam or Lake Hovd, I know I can take this and I'll most likely be fine. I mean, again, if I was going on, say, all the icy roads on Northport, I would probably switch to the chain tyres. So yeah, just there. I went through that swampy bit. I mean, it drives through there, no problem. Flew out the other side, got into high range up the hill, came back down the hill, knocked a few trees out of the way. Did a nice little jump back onto the road. But yeah, another thing I do like about this truck is you can basically just abuse the shit out of it and rally it all over the place. Even if and when you smash the suspension, it doesn't matter. Like, it still drives just fine, even when it's got collapsed suspension. I'd argue, and I've said it before, in some cases you're better off without suspension because you just can't take as much damage. Like, I've found quite a lot once my suspension is gone, I can rally across all, like, rocks, all sorts of stuff, and it doesn't necessarily burst your tyres after that. It just, there's no suspension left to take any damage, so it doesn't take any. Yeah, the fuel tank does get hit a little bit easy, not crazy, but I'm just saying, like, see, going across them though, those rocks, like, I didn't take, obviously because I couldn't, I've got no suspension left, but it's not like it damages the tyres instead or anything. There was obviously no fuel tank left to damage either. And yeah, the gearbox didn't take any damage. The engine can take a bit, as it depends what you're doing. If you're ramping over barriers onto the road and stuff, it sort of comes with the territory. But even now, like, there's a trailer store coming up. Normally I'd have to loop round. With this thing, I just know launch it off the cliff, and yeah, you're probably going to land. You're probably going to be just fine. Got to the trailer store, no problems. And now I'm just using the trick now, it's kind of unrelated to this, but got to a trailer store, buy this trailer, repair my Tayga. I had to end up buying two trailers, like, I sold it back, just bought it straight back because it ran out of points. And yeah, now I've got rid of the big trailer, I just fancied a bit of a change. This is just towing a trailer now instead of, like, some of the weight being sat on the fifth wheel. But as you can see, it's just, I didn't even worry then about having to go round or is it going to get up there. I knew if I just pointed it up there, floored it, especially in high, once I've let it build up its speed, that trailer's basically going to go pretty much wherever I tell it to go. And yeah, that's handy. Like I say, sometimes, say with Pedro Bay as an example, then I have to spawn in Northport, really, Northport or White Valley, but either way you've got a bit of a travel to get to Pedro Bay. Sometimes I might want the experience of SnowRunner on the way and getting stuck and going slow and weaving my way through awkward terrains. Other times, sometimes you just want to jump into a river. Yeah, other times I just want it, it's like I don't want any of the hassle really on the way. I just need to get to Pedro Bay. I want to try something, I want to do something, I want to make some footage, whatever it is. And yeah, this thing gets the job done pretty damn well, if I'm honest. See, it's not too bad for rolling that. I purposely cut that corner, and I do it in the Dolphin quite a bit, and that didn't roll either, but yeah. Holds a loaf pretty nicely. Obviously, I suppose that's the sideboard, so they all do, but point being, it can accelerate up to speed just fine. It drives along just fine, doesn't feel dodgy, doesn't feel like it's trying to roll every 2 minutes or anything like that. I've still got the muds on at the minute as well, which again, overall, I do I suppose I do generally prefer the muds because of the weight characteristics. If it wasn't for that, I would have the chained on. See, cutting across here, and I tend to find this is what, with muds, because they're quite wide, they kind of get bogged down and have to wade through mud, which, considering they're a mud tyre, I sort of feels a little bit inconvenient. The chained tend to sink through the mud, bite onto like the grippier mud underneath, and just go for it. That's why on the container contest in Drowned Lands, the chained were quicker, because they have less chance of like stalling out of high range when I went through the riverbed, and they kept their high range speed more, rather than every little bit of like deep mud that they hit. They didn't slow down and try and wade for a few seconds, they just cut straight through and go. But I do like muds as well on the snow. Again, if there's not many icy roads or anything, then I would rather take the muds on the snow. If there was a lot of icy roads, I would just use the chained, because yeah, nothing else really gives you like any grip at all on the icy roads. So just going for a little lap again on Lake Coved. Again, I'm not going to go all the way, but as you can see, there's no issues. Didn't catch its bumper there, which is pretty nice. I mean, it's just got decent engine power. Everything about it, I'd say, is pretty decent. It's got like decently raised suspension, decent selection of tyres, decent lights, yeah, decent engine power. I was going to say decent gearbox, but high range and off-road, which is the choice I prefer between... There's some trucks that have advanced special whatever, that I'd rather be high range and off-road. I just left this bit in separately, because you see there how you can hear it with the winch. When I was trying to reverse out, I don't know what the hell, I might have got jammed on some ice, but it absolutely just stopped dead. When I went to reverse, it was just wheel spinning, and then when I pressed the winch, it started to let me reverse a bit, and I let it off, stopped again, pressed the winch again, and I reversed out of there. And that's just where I was saying the other day with like some of the game mechanics. By attaching a winch to something, even if you're not pulling on that thing and that's not helping you out of the terrain you're stuck in, it feels like the game gives you some kind of advantage, or like, yeah, it reduces the limitations of the terrain. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but as you could see there, I already had the winch attached to the loaf before I even went into that icy, like the bit where the ice breaks, and yeah, just by pressing the winch, it allowed me to reverse out of there. But I'm only winched to the loaf that's in my sideboard anyway, so that's not making any difference, but it is, as far as the game's concerned. And it's just another reason. I mean, of course, get yourself a loaf, it's a goddamn horse of a vehicle, but just by having the loaf in the sideboard, I was able to reverse out of there. And yeah, fair enough, there was trees around. If I didn't have the loaf, I could have just winched to a tree or whatever, but there is some icy bits on this game where there isn't a tree in reach, and just sort of by proxy of having the loaf on me that I can winch to it and reverse out there, that's pretty handy. Going through a bit of ice here though, I kind of did the cut through, what's it called, the overturned train carriage. I kind of did the contest route for that really, got to the base camp thing, and I'm off. Yeah, gets through the ice just fine, and now I've smashed my suspension up. Just throwing it out there, this was like a pretty good example. Once your suspension is damaged as well, this thing drifts pretty easily rather than just drifts sideways and tips over, and it's not the only truck that it happens with. I suppose a good example of that is the Cat CT680, because it's got zero rear suspension, and it's just as if it's in a permanent state of collapsed suspension. That drifts pretty well without digging in and flipping, and it can do that, but yeah, it's just another thing where this, with collapsed suspension, handles extremely nicely, and it's not something that bothers me at all. I've finished loads of missions with smash suspension, I've started missions with smash suspension, and it's just never really an issue. See, going through there, it's not the fastest, and I've been through there in other trucks that are quicker than that I would easily say this is a better truck overall than them, but that's what I mean. It's like, I wouldn't go as far as to say this is overrated, because I don't necessarily think it is anymore. It might have been for a week or two, given the situation where most of us found it, that you're kind of fighting your way through the game, getting upgrades, pouring all your money into it. When you find this thing, even as stock, it was clearly pretty decent. I did most, I believe, if not all of those seismic vibrator mission things where you had to go and like scout for oil. I did all of them, I believe, with the stock Tayga. I didn't have enough money for the engine. I don't think I'd found the engine at the time that was on Zimnogorsk, I believe. It was basically stock, other than tyres, but everything else was pretty much as I found the Tayga. And yeah, it handled the terrain better than a fair amount of the trucks I had access to at the time, even if I'd spent money on putting upgrades into them. And yeah, this is on Zimnogorsk, going down the muddy bits. That's where I believe the mud tyres kind of weighed a bit more, rather than just run over the top of it. Which, if they weren't mud tyres, I wouldn't be as fussed, but they're muds. They're custom muds. It's like, surely mud should be the place that they excel. And it wouldn't even bother me if the muds excelled in mud to the point where it is bordering on overpowered, because it's like, well, if I don't want that, I'll just stick some different tyres on. Like, there's enough options in this game that I can set any bar that I want, and if I want an easy night of just racing around getting stuff done, I can take something like this. If I want a bit more nuance, I can, yeah, there's plenty of other trucks to choose from. So I suppose now I'm driving past the forest where you find the TUZ420, and again, there's no specific bits of gameplay in this really. I've just tried to go for some laps of the map, enjoy myself, highlight the strengths of it. To be fair, this one hasn't really got many weaknesses. So going up here, and I know it's not completely accurate, and it doesn't need to be really. My tyre testing video with the Drownlands contest kind of shows it better anyway, but while I was trying to get up here, you can see that the muds are still struggling to grip a bit. They can still wheel spin quite a lot, considering that they're very wide and they have what appears to be pretty chunky grip. And yeah, it's not bad. I still got up here, still go to where I want to go or whatever. That's probably partly my driving there. Once I drive out of there though, I've basically just, that's where I said it bogged down about 30 seconds ago or whatever it was. As I come out of there though, you can see where it's like, it's going a little bit slower now, and it's not winding up to high speed. Whereas now I've got the chained on, and it just feels a little bit more punchy when it comes to, yeah, like the iffier, boggier terrain, I suppose. And like I said, this isn't perfect. Even when I turn now, I kind of, not on purpose, but I kept turning too much to the left. I went round the left of those rocks there, which I believe I drove over last time. But can you just see though how it just feels very snappy and punchy in mud with the chained on? Like, I don't know why, but that's just always been my experience with the chained versus muds. As for fuel as well, I mean, it's got pretty decent fuel, all things considered. I'm surprised this wasn't kind of arbitrarily limited with something like fuel. I overcooked it there. I was going to go up the hill, then I was going to go down the hill. I kind of panicked, chose both things at once, and yeah, I rolled it. I mean, another thing I enjoy, flying off the cliff. It's always good for a laugh. Well, it's always, to be honest, a nice test of like, how fast is the truck going. I can generally tell from what I land on that I know how fast, yeah, it's capable of. I mean, pretty nice shot that time, landed in the trailer. I did roll it, but I did notice as well that it seems a little bit better in water. I'm sure last time the wheels started to float up in the water a bit quicker than they do now. Whereas this time, I still had steering control and everything all the way up to where like the snorkel's going to drown. I'm not sure if they have fiddled around with this truck since it launched. There was a time around the Rift update where, and I could be completely wrong about this, but I feel like they just tampered with something a little bit, like just toned it down a couple of %, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. It may not even be this truck specifically that they tampered with. They might have adjusted, say, the terrain resistance stats. I don't even know if that's a real name, but that's what I've been calling them. Like, just the ways the different terrains affect your truck. Maybe they altered that slightly. I mean, it's a bit like with that super snow in Lake Covd. That never really used to be an in-game issue, whereas, I mean, multiple people have said it in the comments, so it's definitely not just me, that some areas of snow on Lake Covd are OP. I'm not sure if that's something to do with like the background stats that they changed, but yeah, it did feel like it took the edge off a tiny little bit. But overall, it's undoubtedly a great truck. If you've only just got this game, or yeah, you've found the Tayga but you're not sure whether to bother putting money into it, I'd put money into it. It is just objectively worth putting the money into. I believe at the minute, even as I've got it upgraded here, it's only about 120 grand, which is pretty damn cheap really. It's only 75 grand to buy the truck, but you find it on Drownlands, so you're better off just getting it for free. But yeah, 75 grand is pretty damn cheap really for quite a lot of the trucks. I mean, the Paystar, isn't that 82 or 92 grand? The Fleetstar, sorry, the Freightliner 114 SD, that's about 93 odd grand. Obviously then you go up to things like the Derry Longhorn, that's 140 odd grand before you've even put an upgrade into it. And this thing would absolutely eat the Derry 4520 for breakfast on everything except steering maybe. Like, I do like the rear steer on the Derry. But yeah, for all practical reasons, like, you can't really get much better than this. I'd actually go as far as to say as well, in this game, and other people have said it, I've said it a while ago, medium-sized trucks kind of have the biggest advantage on this game. That, like, they're big enough that they can handle the terrain. They're not so big that they kind of become a victim of their own size and they kind of lumber along. Yeah, they just have that middle ground. Like, a lot of scouts get stuck in deeper mud, deeper snow, and again, I believe they've artificially made that the case, so that when you first get the game and you're scouting, you're not just flying around everywhere at top speed, you know, taking half an hour to explore an entire map and stuff. But the end result is, I actually did most of my scouting in my game with trucks, and I mean, to be fair, not a lot of it was in this truck, because I didn't find this until fairly near the end. Same with the Loaf, I didn't find that till near the end, which, I mean, I was missing out. But yeah, I actually did a lot of my scouting with the Navistar. I even scouted the whole of White Valley with a Cat 745C, because it was like, if you had a truck on you and you scouted, when you got to the other side of the map, you might see a bit of cargo or just a quick mission you can deliver. Obviously with scouts, I'm not towing one of those shitty scout trailers all the way behind me while I'm scouting, so these just find the middle ground very well. Scouts are like, yeah, scouts. Big massive trucks are like slow and lumbering, they're good at towing the big heavy loads, but yeah, this just sits in the middle ground very well. It can do the scout things, it can handle the heavier loads, that's what she said, and yeah, it's just, it finds that balancing point very well. So I'd say get yourself a Tayga. I use it all the time. It's, yeah, top 4 favourite vehicle, I would say. And that's about it. I hope you've enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.